Hi, I'm Alan, and this is my wife Sue, and we're here to present Imagine a Horse Performance Liberty Training.
Yeah, we like to say that liberty training is the most fun you can have with your saddle off.
Yeah.
And those were our horses. Okay, so most fun you can have with your saddle off. Liberty training is about teaching a horse moves from very simple with one horse to the very complex, as you see here, with 6 of our horses all on revolving pedestals. And what liberty means, in case you don't know, is there's no attachment to the halter. It's like a dog working off leash, and the horses do moves that we have taught them to do, and we direct them with our voice, our physical position, and with some tools.
Yeah, now it doesn't necessarily start out completely off the leash. You start out with them on a short lead rope, walk them through the maneuvers a few times, and little by little you give them a little more liberty as they begin to understand what the question is.
So liberty schooling is really, really popular today. One of the reasons we think it's popular is because people are finally discovering the joy of just being with their horses and not necessarily riding them. A lot of horses weren't meant to be riding horses. A lot of people weren't meant to be riders, but there are a lot of people that really enjoy being with their horses. Liberty schooling creates a closer relationship with your horse. In some liberty circles, horses and humans, they're in a large area, and we call it more of a join-up style liberty, where the handler or the human will want the horse to mimic or copy moves that they do. That's great. That isn't what we do.
Ours is a little more of a circus style performance, where you stand back at a distance and expect the horse to perform on his own anywhere from 15 to 20, maybe even 30 feet away from you, and we incorporate a lot of tricks within the liberty activities.
Exactly. So like Alan said, we teach each move that we are going to want a liberty horse to make. For instance, circling a pedestal, or backing, or passing by another horse. We teach those steps, and they're as ready to learn at 2 hours of age as they are at 2 years. So this is a form of ground training that transfers very easily, very effectively to under saddle work.
We think one of the most important aspects of liberty training is it gives the anxious owner something to do with that young horse while you're waiting for them to become physically mature enough to ride. We know it's very popular to ride these 2-year-olds in competition, but that's really not in the horse's best interest. So if you've got something that's compelling, that's interesting, that's fun to do, you can school your horse, you can develop his mind and create brain power before you try to capitalize on his horsepower.
Exactly. So freedom of movement in liberty training actually keeps a horse engaged, because that's what horses do. They move. In the wild they move, in their pasture they move, so they usually enjoy the movement. So the simple work can be as easy as teaching a horse to walk with you without a lead on.
And through patterns. I just answered a question today back at our trade show booth. A gal was asking me, well, how much food do you use when you're training these liberty horses? Well, food is kind of a secondary interest to the horse. What horses really love is the opportunity to move. It's the liberty. So we will ask for a behavior, ask for a particular trick. If we get a good response, then we'll send the horse away or let the horse move away from us, encourage him to pick up the gait a little bit, and it's kind of like clearing your palate after you've tasted something. The liberty in between the moves or in between the tricks clears the horse's mind, energizes him, keeps his heart rate going, not too high, but keeps him active and willing to come back, because you don't ask them for too much and then you let them go and then you ask them to come back.
Yeah, and they're happy to come back. So let's move on to, okay, here's a Performance Liberty. This is a horse that we raised. As far as we know, he's the only horse in the world that ever did this trick. And Alan didn't put him up there and ask him to sit down. He said, Gator.
Step up.
And
That horse was trained to hop up on the big pedestal, turn around, and sit down. And when we would do this in a show, I would have other horses in the ring, and once he's up on his pedestal and on his beanbag sitting down, anything can happen around him. We would get the horses making circles around him, going opposite directions. He'd just sit there happy as a clam, watching the activity around him.
the other day in foal training, we talked about the value of putting a little foal, only a few hours old, on the beanbag
In our lap.
folding the front legs up like they were folded up in utero, so it's a feeling that the horse knows already, and then we fold the back legs up too. So this horse actually was raised like that. He was sitting down by himself on a beanbag by the time he was like 3 days old. But the reason that horses love that and it's beneficial to the foal is because when they go back in that in utero position, they're like,
It's very relaxing.
they want to fall asleep because that's where they came from. They were inside mama. It was warm and nice and cozy, and that's just what they do. So this is the extension of that with a full-grown horse.
Okay. We don't ask them to sit down on a beanbag at 3 days old by themselves.
No.
They're sitting in our lap. At about 6 weeks, they have enough strength and understanding of the behavior, and actually by the time they're 6 weeks age, they're outgrowing your lap. So what we will do is bring them down and have them sit next to us while we are in a very supportive position. That's the way this guy was raised. You know, from day one, he was either in my lap. By a few weeks of age, he was kind of sitting next to me, and so to him, sitting on a beanbag is just what horses do. He doesn't know any different.
Okay, so why do we love Liberty so much? Because all the exercises that we teach at Liberty have a dual purpose.
Okay.
They can be used later on when you saddle train a horse. Patterns instill responses. They were learned as adolescents or even little horses, and so things like making a circle around a pedestal or a figure 8 around pedestals, they're going to do that later on in mounted work.
So everything that we teach them at Liberty on the ground eventually has a carryover to mounted work, right? And once again, I can't emphasize this enough. We really hope that this will encourage people to engage their horse's brain before they think they just got to get on that little guy and start roping circles.
Yeah. And so some of the moves that the horses learn as adolescents and that we use in Liberty is to walk with us, to halt, and we'll talk about that more with this horse in a minute, to step back, to make inside turns. That means always turn toward you. If they make a pirouette or a circle on the perimeter of a pen, never turn their butt to you, but turn toward you. Turns around objects, go step up on a pedestal, come here, knowing your name. Figure 8 around objects, send to a pedestal, and work into pressure that we'll talk about in a minute. And do you want to explain this?
That's
photo?
your horse.
That's my horse. That's my number one guy at 6. You doing Liberty work. You see what my little horse is doing? He's mimicked my body language. And I made myself a little bit smaller. Knees are bent. My shoulders are in a little bit. Because I don't want to be big around him. I want him to encourage him to come into my space and go with me. And he completely mimicked my body language there. Okay, so again, why we love Liberty. Oh, that's the same one. No, that's not. Okay, so foals will remember their early learning experiences for a lifetime.
The Arabs have an expression for this. Of course, the Arabs have an expression for everything, right? And they say that lessons learned in youth are as if carved in stone, while those learned at maturity fly like leaves on the wind.
It's actually a proverb too, honey.
Okay.
So our foals have always been reliable performers by the time they're weaned. These two little miniature foals, this was one of the best days of my life right here. Those little horses belong to ladies that did psychotherapy with horses, okay? And they wanted the horses to walk little patterns at liberty, and they wanted them to go to their place like a dog. They wanted them to step up on pedestals. And so these little babies were born at our place, and I had taught them all of the little patterns and places and stuff that their owners wanted me to teach them. And so this day we were filming, and Alan said, put them in there together in our training stall. And I did. And they just lined up side by side and marched the little patterns all on their own.
So you notice that Sue's handling those guys with what we call a little guider. It's a horse-friendly guider. It's got a little Nerf ball like on the end of it. And so you can reach out, touch them, guide them around. And it's not like a whip where you're actually hitting them with that thing. It's just it's a tool that you can touch and guide the horse with.
And I have one in each hand, and that's how I've kept them kind of going straight. But that was a lot of fun. So we use a square pen a lot. I don't know if any of you guys do, but we call it the almost lost art of the square pen. All right, and why not the round pen? Maybe we'll use a round pen later. But in teaching liberty and in teaching foals, we use the corners as a training aid. They help us. They are our assistant. We use the natural barrier of the wall or the corner to teach the halt, and then also to make turns. So when the baby horses are little, why don't you explain this? Okay. When the baby horses are maybe
You're on a roll, honey.
just a few days old, we have the mama across a see-through barrier having her food, and we teach the little horses to walk with us. So if you've ever had your mom or your teacher put a finger right here in this groove in your jaw, it doesn't take very much pressure, just the lightest of touches to get you to move away from it. So we walk the foal around the stall, teach it to yield both directions and to halt, okay? So there isn't any reason to wait till you halter train this horse or wait till he's 2 years old to bring him in to learn these things. They think from day 1 or 2 that they walk with humans. That's what you do. You walk with the human.
So
you halt.
as an extension of that behavior, what Sue's doing here is she walked this young horse into a corner, and once again she's using a guider in one hand and a lunge whip in the other hand that's
Sure.
behind the horse. The lunge whip encourages forward movement, and the guider tells the nose where to go. Because wherever the nose goes, the body will follow. So having guiders like this really helps you enclose the horse in a very controlled space that you control.
Exactly. And we want you to know that whip is a noun, not a verb.
Yeah.
Right? So that Alan actually is an engineer by education, and he designed these whips, and we've sold a gazillion of them over the years because they're really, really handy. So again, my little horse here is at liberty. I walked him into the corner. Ho, he learns to hoe, all right? So then we want him later on in liberty training to be able to turn with us. And remember, as a foal, we already taught him to turn by the tiniest pressure right past his jaw. So he understands that. So there, I walked him into the corner. He was next to me, and I just slipped the short, you didn't bring a short one, honey?
No.
Slipped the real short guider on the other side to catch his other eye, and he learned to do a small circle or a pirouette. Okay, a little bit later on, I want him to be able to turn toward me at liberty. So I scooted him into the corner with my guiders. He was really at a walk, but if you see what I did is I moved my guiders over here because I've already taught him this move, and just lifted it up, and he turned his face away from it and learned to make a circle around me. So we call that turn, and then again would be the rest of the circle. First we teach a simple turn like this, and then a pirouette. So, remember our baby horse.
So the next step in that procedure is sometimes we'll put a pedestal about 6 feet from the corner and teach the horse to make a circle around the pedestal, using it like they use those orange traffic cones at a car rally to mark exactly where the car is supposed to turn. We'll often use a pedestal like the pylon and get the horse to turn around the pedestal. Or in this case, what Sue is asking the horse to do is to go into the corner, turn to face us, and work into the pressure and come, and the next thing that horse is going to do is step up on the pedestal.
Because that's his release. The pedestal is the safe place, the happy place, the place that belongs to him. He gets a breath and stops there. Okay, so let's talk about this working into pressure. Because being horse trainers, all of our lives, we're always told to teach the horse to yield to pressure. And we do, physically.
To move away from pressure.
To yield to pressure. Okay. As far as I know, I mean, we've traveled a lot, but we haven't seen anyone use this technique called working into pressure. So I move that horse into the corner, not at a frantic pace, just pay attention but move. And then I encourage him by opening my body and the guiders.
And keeping them low.
Alan calls it putting the horse in the vacuum. He already knows that it's a great thing to be able to step up on the pedestal and get his release. So he's coming into the pressure of the whips as I'm giving him a place to go. You have no idea how valuable that is later on, especially
what it actually turns into is the ability to send the horse to a pedestal. Once they get very familiar with going to a pedestal and coming into it, then later on you can send them to a pedestal at a distance, quite a ways away, and expect them to behave and do what you want.
Yeah. And so I love the expression on this guy's face, because he's zoned in on me, but he's happy to work, and he just turned into a great horse. Always was a great horse. Okay, performance liberty. And this is really Alan's deal. He loves performance liberty. So that would be like a circus routine, okay? And do you want to talk
I'm
about
one of the
that?
last in the generation that actually got to go to the Ringling Brothers Circus when they were still under the big top. Nowadays, they always appear in some kind of big arena, but they weren't under a tent, right? So I have that memory when I was a child and never lost it. In 2002, I made the acquaintance of Sasha Hook, who was the head trainer at Ringling Brothers, and I showed him some pictures of what I was doing. He said, well, why don't you come and watch on practice days? I said, really? I said, yeah, come on in. They don't normally let people in because they're very aware that there's animal rights activists with hidden cameras always trying to catch them doing something, and Sasha trusted me. And what I found out was how incredibly responsible trainers these guys are. They're not anything like some of these animal rights groups would have you believe, right? The care of their animals, and we're talking horses and camels and cats and elephants and stuff, because that's how they make their money. They can't make money with sick or injured or animals that misbehave. So anyway, Sasha grew up as a child in the Circus Canie in Switzerland. They produce, without a doubt, the finest Liberty horse acts the world has ever seen. He was there for 20 years. His dad was there with Freddie Canie for 40 years. And so there's nothing about training horses that Sasha doesn't know, and there was nothing that he held back from me and showed me how he does this. And the way he does it is he has an unlimited number of assistants that come in and ring. If he's trained putting a new act together and he's got 6 horses in the ring, he has 6 assistants with the lead rope leading the horse through the pattern. If he has 9 horses, he has 9 assistants leading the horses through the pattern. And Sasha stays in the center. He makes little gestures with his hands. He always has a ring whip and a guider, just like we do. And I like to call Sasha the master of the fine art of doing almost nothing. Because when you watch one of his performances, that's what he does, almost nothing. And the horses have memorized the routine by first being led through it. And that might take anywhere from 6 weeks or more. before the horses start to learn to do it on their own. Well, I never had the advantage of having assistants to help me lead a new horse through the pattern. So what I would do, I would train one horse, what the pattern was, what I expected him to do, and then I would clip a second horse to him.
But we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. In this case, the horse on the outside knows the pattern, and I've got a lead rope. Sue's got a lead rope on the inside.
A lunge line.
Yeah.
So in our style of Liberty, we're going to want the horses to go together. All right. The horse here on the inside is just a young guy. He might be barely 2. And then the outside, that guy's been around for a little bit longer. So he knows to free lunge around the perimeter. All right. He also knows to turn towards us, like we've already taught him and talked about, toward us when we ask him to. So the next step, the little chestnut Arabian being a little bit shy, is to lunge them side by side. Okay, so that's what I'm doing there. I have a longer whip like this that I can reach out, not whip, but touch the gray horse if I need to have him move up, like Alan talked about in Liberty yesterday. When you have more than one horse, you have to be able to see the horse's eyes, so they can see you, so they can answer to what you're asking them to do and not hide behind the other horse. So we call this a step in establishing herd hierarchy. Okay, so that doesn't mean that gray guy on the outside is the boss because he's the boss in the pen. It means I'm the boss because you, mister, are going to keep moving and my young horse is going to keep moving. And that's how they learn to do it that way. Now the next step, okay, these are lessons in teamwork. When I used to take piano lessons, my teacher would always say, one hand, then the other, then both. Okay, so this is how we teach the horses to later do a sophisticated pass-through. Okay, so this guy, the gray horse, is still lunging on my physical cues, my proximity cues, and my voice. And now I've asked the little chestnut horse to go the opposite direction. All right, and we'll do that many times, reverse the directions in a lunge session. And you can see they both got their ears a little bit, because that's a weird thing. Most people don't do that. Put two horses that close together and establish control and ask them to do anything.
So the reason she's got a line on this one, because he's a little hot little 2-year-old Arab, and if she didn't have a little bit of control, he would be wanting to zoom around. And that doesn't do us any good. So she's got the line on him, wanting to keep him going in the correct direction. Because what they would like to do is join up together and go take off the other direction, right? So this way we control that.
Doing shows or when they change a routine, they don't have time to waste. So they would make no mistakes. So that is what we call error-free learning.
Learning without mistakes.
Learning without mistakes. So and I used to get horses like this when I trained saddle horses for folks, horses that you have to fix stuff on, all right? These are our horses. They're valuable to us, and we love working with them, and we don't want them to make mistakes. We want to set them up to the best of our ability that they can answer the requests that we make.
Yeah. One time I was observing one of Sasha's practice sessions, and his daughter was one of his assistants, and they were leading the horses into making pirouettes. And Sasha stays in the middle of the ring, and he calls out first to the assistants, and of course the horses hear it, and later it would just be the horses. But he called out for everybody to make a turn. I think they called it volte or something like that. And Karen, his daughter, turned the wrong direction. Oh my God, you can't believe how Sasha reamed her out. Later on, one of the very few times I ever questioned Sasha, I said, my gosh, Sasha, why are you so tough on Karen, right? And now he had infinite patience with the horses. He had zero patience with the handlers when they would do something wrong. And he said, Alan, you must understand, if she turns wrong one time, that might set my training back 6 weeks, because that horse turned wrong, and he'll try and do it again tomorrow and the next day. So this error-free learning is of incredible value.
Yeah, And let me just say, it takes a lot of patience because for some reason, it's ingrained in human beings to want to run the horses. Run the horses, run the horses, you know, round pen the horses. And what that does,
Yeah. Well,
pumps them full of adrenaline.
basically
raises their
what
heart.
you, yeah, what you do is you teach everything at the walk. Calm, quiet, low adrenaline level. You school at the trot, and you spend a lot of time at the trot. And only rarely do you ever move up to a canter or a gallop.
In this kind of work. So to get the horses to line up together, remember we said separately then together, more lessons in teamwork. This is just a little weanling foal that we had in for trick training for some folks. A reining bred horse.
He's 6 months old.
Yeah, and then this is one of Alan's Lusitanos that he's not even
Barely a year, if that.
So they're clipped together, and you can use string, so it breaks. But those two are used to working together, and this is how you get them to work 2 by 2.
So the buckskin has already been taught. He understands. I've been doing this with him since he was just, a few months old. He already understands my cues, my commands, and what I'm going to ask him to do. And we clipped a little 6-month-old weanling to him. Now what we'll do, we'll take a piece of string off a feed sack and make a little loop and tie it to one of the horse's halters, and then we clip our connecting rope to that loop of string. So there's a breakaway. If something happens and one of them pulls back real hard, they don't torque or jerk on you, that little string breaks. Yes, it's a mistake, but we would rather have that string break than something else. It's just a kind of a safety thing that you can do.
So these are 4 of our horses, and our lead horse at the time, Gator, Navigador, if you can see his ears, he was a very intense horse, and he was extremely serious about his job. And we would put younger ones, like my little chestnut Arabian there, we would put them in with Gator to learn the patterns. And you can see that Gator is like, you stay back.
You better pay attention to me. Yeah.
He was one of Alan's best assistants. Okay, so now it's a circus, okay? And now they're ready to perform as a team. The moves that they learned separately earlier on. And you want to talk a little bit about this, the working into pressure? And
Well, you notice the way these horses are lined up. They're not perfectly in a straight line. They're staggered just a little bit. I want to be able to see. If I'm on the center of the ring, basically, like this picture over here, I want to be able to see that outside horse and the next horse. I got to be able to see their eye. If I can't see their eye, that means they're hiding and they can't see me. So this is the way that you maintain your control. And one of the behaviors that you teach them is to move up, move up. You're always constantly telling that outside horse, move up. The second horse, move up.
by name.
By name.
Calling them by name. So they
And
can
all of
answer.
our horses, we teach them absolutely to know their name. Because they don't know their name, then how can you ever call out to that individual horse and tell him, hey, you're the one that needs to move up. Now here, I'm slightly in front of the horses, and basically what I'm doing, I'm kind of moving backwards in a small circle and getting those horses to come in to me. When you back up in front of a horse, what you do is you create sort of a vacuum in front of the horse, and the horse will fill that vacuum with his presence. And this really manifests itself when you start teaching the horses what we call tricks of gait, where you want them to do maybe great big trots or a Spanish walk or something like that. You want them to feel very bold, and that feeling of boldness comes from you backing up and giving them the opportunity to move into that space that you just left. What you're doing is you're giving real estate to them. Natural horsemanship, the basic premise of natural horsemanship is who controls the ground that the horse stands on? Does the horse even have a piece of ground to stand on? You know, some of these join-up techniques, they send the horse around the pedestal and they keep sending him and sending him. They don't give the horse any ground at all.
The ring.
The ring, yeah, sorry. They send the horse, they don't let the horse have his own piece of ground, right? And that's, pretty soon the horse gets kind of tired of that and starts looking at the handler like, please, please, can I have a piece of ground? That's when you relax and give them something. So in this case, I'm giving ground in front of them, which keeps the horses, you can see they're focused on me, they're tuned in on me.
Yeah, and so that's a difficult thing to do, and that's a fine art, because he is applying a little bit of pressure, but they're to come into the pressure. Yeah. In this case, we're not talking about saddle training horses necessarily here, although all this can be used, because a lot of people are taught never to give up ground to a horse. But with what we do, it's pretty important. Okay, that's my husband. So after they've learned to pair up, and remember that they've learned almost all the moves that we're going to ask them for, they learned them when they were adolescents. So Alan calls this nose to tail, and for that reason. So he can send them out. He can, while they're working, he can tell them by name to either move up or slow down, and they will do it. And this is just one of the moves that they do as a team now, that they learned separately earlier, is the waltz, that would be to make a pirouette and keep on going. Yeah. Anything else about that?
Well, a lot of times when they're going nose to tail, I will call out to the lead horse and tell him to change, and what he'll do, he'll turn inward, come in, the other horses are proceeding, and he'll come in, he'll fall in behind the others, and so I'll call them one at a time. Gator. Change. There we go. Do it right there.
So changing. This horse, the big bay horse, Alan just told him to change, and see, he put his guiders like this to cue the horse to bring his nose around to make that turn, and Dos, that the bay horse, will go to the end of the line, okay? And then this is, so that's called changing places. This is another form of changing places. This is like musical chairs. Do you want to talk about that?
We have the horses on the perimeter of the ring, and I'll ask the lead horse to hop up on the pedestal. The gray horse was up there and standing. The chestnut horse circled, and then when he came around the second time, I told him to go to the pedestal, and as he hops up, the gray horse hops off, and they change places. We would do that usually 2 or 3 times in a little show.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our circus, and remember we said earlier and in our other presentations that our horses learn when they're little, and they learn from other horses. This one of my little horses, he's a little colt. I don't think he was even weaned there, but here Alan's, he's got neck collars on these guys, and he's got them there. I don't think they're tied together there, but there's 4 horses there, and little baby Mars
bringing up the rear,
learning the pattern by watching the other horses. And so there, he's got 6 horses. I can't tell if they're
2 are clipped together because they're young. The other 4 already know it. But Uno, the gray Andalusian on the outside, is leading the little buckskin Lusitano on the inside because he was the youngest horse.
And they take their job of mentoring these horses very seriously. I don't know if any of you guys have ridden a saddle horse and ponied a young horse. Well, it's not uncommon at all to be ponying a horse, and the horse you're on is going, making faces, the ugly face, saying, "Get back. You are not in the lead here. Get back." Okay, so they take those things very seriously.
So what's happening here is the gray on the outside in front was my lead horse, and I'm trying to bring the little buckskin up, giving him the confidence that he can be a lead horse. So I attach him to my most confident lead horse. So now the buckskin is learning to be in front of all the other guys.
So, like we always say, you don't have to run away to join the circus, but we'll finish it in a minute. So remember when we were lunging the horses different directions and giving the younger one or inexperienced the confidence to pass those horses? This is that young horse now, and Alan's working these guys at liberty, and the 2 older horses are coming straight at that young one, and he does a pass through.
It's also called threading the needle.
Yeah. And so if you think of taking this little young guy and first teaching him to lunge on a line and then working him beside and opposite directions of the older, more experienced big boss horse, that takes a lot of courage for that little guy to go through there. And it wouldn't happen if we hadn't taken control of the herd hierarchy. I am the leader while we're here. You guys are not the leader. Doesn't mean we won't listen to you and you can't express yourself, but somebody has to be the leader.
So this is a nice little trick over here. We get these two guys circling the ring as a pair. I tell this guy to hop up on the pedestal, and they
Presentation yesterday on trick horse training. We don't let the horses just take those balls and mount them and destroy them. We teach them to guide the ball with their nose and bring it back to us. That's got real value. That learning is taking place there. Where if you just let them play with the ball on their own, it looks like a lot of fun, but they don't learn anything. And we're all about learning.
So Liberty can include tricks, and that's what this is. Their trick is to nudge that ball along, just using their end of their nose, stay out on the perimeter of the ring, wait for me to call them inward to bring the ball to me. These guys, I sent them to these are two sisters, okay, Arabian sisters. They, I sent them, I didn't lead them up to that pedestal with lead ropes. I just sent them to the pedestal, stood up, stood back, and then asked them for a salute. And the camera happened to catch it just the right time. And that's, it's almost too perfect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And with these guys, we have photos, and it's actually on some of our DVDs and downloads of Alan with 3 horses in the ring, 3 balls, and he can call them by name. Gator, bring it here. He'll do it. Then he'll call the next horse, bring it here. Give him a reward. It's a lot of fun, and it takes a lot of teamwork on the part of the horses. So, honey.
I always like to say you don't have to run away to join the circus. With a willing horse or 2, you can have one in your own backyard. With a little imagination and a willing horse or 2, you can have one in your own backyard. Here's a good example of this horse working into pressure. I had him circle a ring, and then I called him to me. He reared up, so he's doing a hind leg walk. He's coming, he's going to land on the pedal
right next to you.
Right on the pedestal right next to me.
Yeah.
So you notice he's equipped with side reins there? And that's what's called a Vienna side reins or a running side rein. Doesn't really tie him down, but that's something that I learned from watching Sasha in the circus. They always train their horses wearing side reins, but for one reason they use all stallions, and you put a bunch of stallions in a ring, it can be contentious, right? But what it does, it causes the horse to give you just a little bit more focus. So you should never eschew, I think is the right word, the use of side reins. They come in very handy.
Yeah. So if you didn't catch our presentation yesterday, we talked about how the rare is a move that almost no trainer will teach, and nobody wants their student on a horse that rears. And the rare is usually taught to a horse by striking its front legs. Okay, the horse comes up like this. His back hollows out. It's a dangerous position. The way we teach the rare is we just teach the horse to circle the pedestal, move a little quicker than usual, and then say a word like "hup" or "get up" or something, and the horse will go, "Whoa, okay," and kind of plops the front feet down. Later, we have all kinds of horse tools. So we have a target board that has horizontal rungs on it that we teach the horse to stretch out his leg in order to teach him the Spanish walk. And then we have a climbing wall. Okay, the climbing wall goes to the ceiling and has horizontal cleats. And after the horse has learned to do just a little hop onto the pedestal, we send them into the climbing wall. And they will stand with a real high or wide stance in behind. They've already learned about the target board, so they're reaching forward. So they move forward, their back is rounded, they have a wide stance, and they have a target.
So that's what he's doing. He's targeting the pedestal. I'm just calling him to me. He's been taught to come to a pedestal and land. So It's an easy trick to teach, actually.
Yeah, and if you teach a move like this in association with a pedestal or a target board, you're just not going to have a horse that wants to do it unless you cue him to do it. That's our circus, honey.
Okay.
You guys have any questions?
Any questions?
About Liberty? It is fun, fun, fun.
That's why it's such a popular new discipline now.
Yeah, it is fun. And it, again, gives you something to do with your young horses before they're mature enough to ride. Or maybe some aren't riding horses. But all of our horses are trick horses, Liberty horses,
And trail riding.
our saddle horses, our trail horses that work every single day.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Yes.
This has got to take a really long time to get them to do some of these things.
Yeah, a couple of days.
What is your average? Couple of days.
Sorry, go ahead.
Like, how long do you work with a horse at a time? Like, do they 20 minutes, half an
Yeah,
hour?
15, 20 minutes and move on. In our presentation yesterday, we talked about the categories of tricks. Pedestal training, Liberty training, tricks of gait, tricks of engagement,
Trust.
tricks of trust. You can work on any one of those areas for 15, 20 minutes and then move over to another area. And in 15, 20, maybe 5 minutes, move over to another area. And it keeps the horse very fresh and engaged because you're not overdoing it and repeating the same thing over and over again. That's a mistake a lot of people make. Have you ever been to a big horse, like a fancy quarter horse show, and
Don't
watch
roll your eyes.
watch the guys in the raining warm-up ring? What are they doing? Spinning and sliding and spinning and sliding, and you know, I'm sure after about the second spin or slide, that horse is getting really sick of it, right? And really, those guys are just breaking their horses down. But when you realize that there are different areas of trick training, that keeps you from having to focus just on one thing, right, all the time. And so it gives you a lot of variety in your training and keeps the horse fresh and looking for the next activity that you do.
And remember, we talked about error-free learning. We do everything within our power to set the horse up so he's successful, so he has fun. He has a little bit of self-expression and freedom. And I did this to Amy yesterday, and can I do this to you again? Spell cat.
C-A-T.
Spell cat.
C-A-T.
Spell cat.
C-A-T.
Spell cat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done. Practice makes perfect is a human concept, not an animal concept. They probably want to puke over too many repetitions. So another beauty of trick training is you have all of these categories. Like, you know the little Palomino horse at first that I was teaching to make the turns and stops and work into pressure? I probably never worked that guy more than 10 minutes at a time learning those things. And I can tell when he's got it or when he doesn't. But when he doesn't, I'm not going to keep asking for it. I'm going to change the focus. I have a puppy. Modern puppy training says you don't reprimand, you change the focus. So with a horse, if he's not getting it in our world, maybe not in your world, but in our world, just give him a break. Stop asking. Go do something else where he's going to say, "Oh, this is fun. I got a cookie. This is fun." So, you know what? If a person that wants a fully trained trick horse would spend 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, and do that for 30 days, you have no idea how far down the road that horse would be.
So that's it. I want you to go out and play with your horses and have fun.
Yeah. We're always available. Telephone, text, email, answer your questions.
ImagineAhorse.com. That's how you find us on the internet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you. All right.
No.
What? Oh, it turned off.
Oh, there you are. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming back. That is so good. Lots of good numbers.
What are you smiling?
I know. That's good. I haven't been able to find anything style.
something all the time. I never could when I was working, could you?
I know, it gets me on edge when I'm like, oh, do they have to be all these? Maybe they need a little break. Maybe they need to look away for a minute. Maybe they have something else covered.
Because in the wild, they learn one or two times. And it's a done deal. It's the people that don't know how to ask those stuff. And you know what the biggest thing is you can do is just when you get possession of him or later on or whenever it is, just like
Yeah, or they have some
you
cat
dated
related
her
or
husband,
something.
spend enough time
Hook up.
to know that woman, to
You
really
know,
know
well,
her.
Did it work? Everything okay?
Oh, everything was perfect.
Okay.
So you guys sell those little guys things?
We do. Alan's gone back at the
Did you learn how to use your toys now?
Oh
Or,
my gosh, I have it, this
or
is
we
so
can,
great.
or we
I
can
know.
send them to you. Either way.
And I'm like,
I will
you guys drive-
guarantee,
Oh yeah, you drove.
We drove.
I will
Goes on
guarantee
the plane.
that
Oh, you
they,
probably can't.
Cool.
that their methods work
That looks like it's
100%.
great.
That's how she
I
raised
wanna
her.
follow you.
That's how I
Lusitano
train my
babies.
foals, and that's how I met Alan, with- with my Lusitanos and started doing my enhanced foal training with my Lusitanos.
I know I've been taking all these notes, Lisa. I was like telling these guys that the way they talk about how they work with the horses and everything really, it just resonates. I just really am enjoying.
We love them and respect them and
Yeah.
want them to learn and we don't ever want to have to.
And it just feels more engaging. It's like with humans, when you find a way, an engaging way to
Yeah.
learn, learning is more pleasant.
Yeah, it's
For
not learning.
everybody
It's
involved.
not learning.
Yeah,
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
yeah.
You're too young to know Roy Rogers.
I do know Roy Rogers.
Okay, so he has this really great, his last album he did with like Clint Black and Susie Boggess, a bunch of people. He sang a song and he said, he was talking about the old days and he said, Trigger was 4, it's gonna make me cry. And I was 26 and it wasn't like work, just play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I really got a lot from you guys. Thank you so much for coming.
I am so happy to meet you.
Well, and there's so much what they teach that it's a crossover.
Oh, I'm like, do this kind of stuff with clients. Yeah, it's play. It's learning through
It
play.
is.
And it's developing relationships through play.
You know, if you've got a saddle horse, the thing is, if you have a horse that will retrieve a frisbee for you, that will climb a climbing wall for you, he'll walk through fire for you.